Jerry carried Sophia to his room, humming softly as he walked into his neat one-room apartment. Gently, he closed the door behind him. He sat on the bed, holding the baby close. The cheerful look on his face faded, replaced by something strange. His lips moved as he muttered something under his breath, words too quiet for anyone to hear. Sophia, unaware of anything strange, laughed and touched the chain on Jerry's neck. He gave a small smile, but his eyes stayed cold. He laid Sophia on the bed, unhooked his clothing, and did some odd things to Sophia. He reached out for a tissue paper when he was done, and quickly cleaned her mouth and then rocked the baby to sleep. Corper Jerry came to the quiet town of Enugu for his National Youth Service Corps. His arrival brought joy and excitement to the compound where he was staying. The compound had only 3 other tenants: Mr. Bernard, his wife, Mrs. Juliana, and their lovely 13-month-old daughter, Sophia. Mr. Bernard was a banker who worked long hours. He left early in the morning and came back late at night. His wife, Mrs. Juliana, ran a small provision store just outside the compound gate. Jerry was a friendly and charming young man in his late 20s. With his bright smile and warm personality, he quickly became well-liked by the neighbors. Soon, Jerry became very close to Mrs. Juliana and her baby. Sophia was the kind of baby everyone noticed. Her big, bright eyes and sweet, cheerful giggle could warm anyone's heart. People often stopped at the provision store just to admire her. From the day Jerry moved into the compound, he took a special liking to baby Sophia. Whenever she cried, he was always the first to help. "Let me carry her," he would say with a warm smile that was hard to resist. Mrs. Juliana, often tired from taking care of Sophia and managing her shop, was grateful for Jerry's willingness to help. Sophia had a strange bond with Jerry. No matter how much she cried in her mother's arms, she would stop the moment Jerry took her to his room. At first, no one thought much of it, but no one knew what Corper Jerry was doing to her before she fell asleep. Mrs. Juliana always thanked Jerry with deep appreciation. "God bless you, Corper Jerry," she would say. "You're a lifesaver." To show how grateful she was, she often brought him plates of freshly cooked food. At first, everything seemed perfect. Jerry was the perfect neighbor, always kind and helpful. He fixed broken light bulbs in the compound, carried groceries for Mrs. Juliana, and even shared business tips to help her shop grow. Mr. Bernard was often too busy with work to pay much attention, but now and then he praised Jerry for being a reliable neighbor. But Jerry was not as he seemed. There was more to him than met the eye. Behind Jerry's friendly smile was a clever and calculating mind. He wasn't helping just out of kindness. There was something strange about the way he adored Sophia. He was always too eager to take her to his room, even when there was no reason to. Sometimes he kept her with him for hours, saying he just wanted to give Mrs. Juliana some rest. But there was something unsettling about it all. Attention, please. Dear viewers, as you continue to watch, kindly share your opinion on this story and tell us which country you are watching from. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video to your loved ones. Thank you so much. Mrs. Juliana trusted Jerry completely and never questioned his intentions. One hot afternoon, while Mr. Bernard was at work and most people stayed indoors to escape the scorching sun, Jerry walked over to Mrs. Juliana's shop. Sophia was crying loudly, her chubby cheeks wet with tears. "Ah, this baby is really troubling you today," Jerry said, leaning on the counter. "She's been restless all morning," Mrs. Juliana sighed, rocking Sophia in her arms. "Maybe she's teething or something." "Let me carry her for a while," Jerry offered with a smile. "You know she always calms down with me." Without hesitation, Mrs. Juliana handed Sophia over. Mrs. Juliana handed Sophia over without a second thought. As always, the moment Jerry held her, she stopped crying. He smiled and looked at Mrs. Juliana. "You see? She just likes me," he said confidently. Mrs. Juliana laughed. "You're like her uncle already. Thank you, Corper Jerry." Jerry carried Sophia to his room, humming softly as he walked into his neat one-room apartment. Gently, he closed the door behind him. He sat on the bed, holding the baby close. The cheerful look on his face faded, replaced by something strange. His lips moved as he muttered something under his breath, words too quiet for anyone to hear. Sophia, unaware of anything strange, laughed and touched the chain on Jerry's neck. He gave a small smile, but his eyes stayed cold. He laid Sophia on the bed, unhooked his clothing, and did some odd things to Sophia. He reached out for a tissue paper when he was done, and quickly cleaned her mouth and then rocked the baby to sleep. While this was happening, Mrs. Juliana stayed busy at the shop, relieved by the quiet after Sophia's cries. She didn't realize that her trust in Jerry might be misplaced. Later that evening, Jerry returned with Sophia, peacefully asleep in his arms. "She just needed a nap," he said, handing the baby back to her mother. "Thank you so much," Mrs. Juliana said with a smile. "You're truly a blessing to us." Jerry simply nodded, his usual smile never leaving his face as the days went by. Over the weeks, Jerry's bond with Sophia grew stronger. He spent more time with her, often offering to babysit, even when Mrs. Juliana didn't ask. He seemed to know exactly how to make the baby happy, a talent that only made Mrs. Juliana trust him more. One day, Mrs. Juliana decided to go to a nearby market to restock her shop. She waited for Corper Jerry to return from his primary assignment. A few minutes after he arrived, she called out to him as she passed by his room. "Yes, Mrs. Juliana," he answered, stepping outside. "I need to buy some goods from the market. Can you help me watch Sophia for a little while? I'll be back soon." "Of course," he said with a bright smile. "You know I don't mind." Mrs. Juliana handed Sophia to him and left, feeling reassured that her baby was in safe hands. Once again, Jerry took the baby into his room and closed the door behind him, but this time something felt off. His movements were slower, more careful. He carefully placed Sophia on the bed, his eyes locked on her as he silently watched. His face remained a blank slate, giving away nothing of his thoughts. Then, deliberately, he unfastened his clothing once again and did some odd things to her mouth. Outside the compound, everything was quiet. No one noticed the closed door or wondered what was going on inside. When Mrs. Juliana came back an hour later, she found Jerry sitting outside, gently rocking Sophia, who was asleep, just like usual. "Thank you so much," she said as she took her baby. "Any time," Jerry replied, but his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. That evening, when Mr. Bernard came home from work, Mrs. Juliana told him how helpful Jerry had been. "He's so good with Sophia," she said. "She stops crying whenever he carries her." Mr. Bernard nodded, too tired to really listen. "That's good," he murmured before heading to their bedroom. But not everyone in the compound felt the same way as Mrs. Juliana. Mama Rita, an elderly woman who lived in the third apartment, had been watching Jerry for a while. She often saw him taking Sophia to his room and keeping her there for long stretches of time. Something about it didn't feel right to her. "That Corper is too close to that baby," she muttered to herself one evening. "It's not normal." One day, Mama Rita decided to speak up. "Mrs. Juliana," she said, cornering her inside the shop, "I know you trust Corper Jerry, but you should be careful. It's not right for a man to be so attached to a baby that's not his." Mrs. Juliana laughed, dismissing the concern. "Mama Rita, you worry too much. Corper Jerry is just a good man. He's helping me because he knows how busy I am." Mama Rita said, shaking her head. "I hope you're right," but her words stayed in Mrs. Juliana's mind. Later that night, as she fed Sophia, Mrs. Juliana found herself wondering if there was more to Jerry's kindness than she realized. The days leading up to Easter were busy in the compound. The tenants were busy cleaning, preparing, and talking about how they would celebrate the holiday. Corper Jerry announced that he would be traveling to his hometown for the Easter break. When Mrs. Juliana heard this, her face dropped. "You're leaving?" she asked, sounding more disappointed than she meant to. "Yes, I want to see my family and celebrate Easter with them," Jerry replied with a smile. "But who will carry Sophia when she cries?" Mrs. Juliana asked, half joking but with real concern in her voice. "This child only listens to you these days," Jerry chuckled and reassured her. "Don't worry, Mrs. Juliana, I'll be back soon. It's just for a short while." Mrs. Juliana sighed and shook her head. That day, Sophia was especially restless, crying every few minutes. It seemed like Jerry's absence would only make things more stressful for her. The day Jerry was about to leave, Mrs. Juliana called him to her shop. "Well, if you're going, make sure you greet your mother for me," she said. "She must be proud to have a son as helpful as you." She handed him a bag filled with provisions, milk, biscuits, tins of sardines, and packets of noodles. "Take these for your mother," she said. "I know she'll appreciate them." Jerry's smile grew wider. "Thank you so much, Mrs. Juliana, you're too kind." She then pressed some cash into his hand. "Use this for your transport and buy something small for yourself." Jerry hesitated for a moment, then took the money. "You didn't have to do all this, but thank you. God bless you." A few minutes later, as Jerry was about to leave, he stopped by Mrs. Juliana's apartment to say goodbye to Sophia. He kissed her forehead and said, "Be a good girl, Sophia. Don't trouble your mommy too much." Sophia, though young, smiled and reached for his face. Mrs. Juliana almost teared up as she saw him off. "Safe journey, Corper Jerry. Come back soon, okay?" "I will," he promised, waving as he walked out of the compound. The weeks that followed were tough for Mrs. Juliana without Jerry around. Sophia's cries seemed louder and came more often. No matter what Mrs. Juliana tried, Sophia wouldn't calm down like she used to when Jerry carried her. She rocked her, sang to her, and even gave her extra snacks. But nothing worked as well as Jerry's presence. Mama Rita, who often sat outside her flat watching everything, saw Mrs. Juliana struggling with Sophia. She muttered to herself, so now she's realizing how much she depends on that copper." One sunny afternoon, Mrs. Juliana was at her breaking point. Sophia had been crying non-stop, and no matter how much she rocked or sang, nothing worked. Frustrated, she sat down and whispered, "God, please bring Corper Jerry back soon." A few weeks later, Corper Jerry returned to the compound. His arrival was like a burst of sunshine on a cloudy day for Mrs. Juliana. As soon as she saw him walk through the gate with his small travel bag, she almost jumped for joy. "Corper Jerry, you're back," she exclaimed, rushing out of her shop with Sophia in her arms. Jerry smiled, looking a bit tired from his journey, but still as charming as ever. "Yes, I'm back, Mrs. Juliana. How have you been?" "Oh, we've been managing," she said, glancing down at Sophia. "But Sophia has really missed you. She hasn't stopped crying since you left." Jerry reached out for Sophia, and as if on cue, she stopped fussing and clung to him, giggling. Mrs. Juliana sighed in relief. "You see, it's like magic," Jerry laughed. "Maybe she just likes me too much." "Let me not disturb you," Mrs. Juliana said. "Go and rest. You must be tired from your journey." Jerry nodded and walked to his flat. He had just started unpacking when he heard a knock on his door. "Who's there?" he called out. "It's me, Mrs. Juliana," came the familiar voice. He opened the door to see her standing there with Sophia. "Here, carry your baby," she said with a laugh, gently placing Sophia on his bed. "She's all yours." Before Jerry could say anything, she turned and walked away, heading back to her shop. Jerry stood there, looking at Sophia, who was already reaching for the buttons on his shirt. He shook his head and smiled. "You're really the boss around here, aren't you?" Meanwhile, Mama Rita sat outside her flat, watching everything closely. She saw Mrs. Juliana leave Sophia in Jerry's room, and the door closed behind them. With a heavy sigh, she tilted her head and shook it slowly, her hand resting on her chin. She muttered. "This woman doesn't listen. I've warned her to be careful, but she won't listen. May God help her." 2 hours later, Mrs. Juliana went back to Jerry's flat. She knocked lightly before opening the door. Inside, Jerry was sitting on his bed, holding Sophia, who was peacefully asleep in his arms. "Oh, she's already asleep," Mrs. Juliana said, smiling. "Yes," Jerry replied. "She's such a sweet baby." Mrs. Juliana carefully took Sophia from his arms, cradling her gently. "Thank you so much, Corper Jerry. You don't know how much you've helped me," she said. "It's nothing," Jerry replied, waving her thanks away. "I'm always happy to help." Mrs. Juliana walked out of the flat, holding Sophia as she made her way back to her room. As she passed Mama Rita, she smiled and said, "Good evening, Mama." Mama Rita simply stared at her, her face serious, and shook her head, not saying a word in return. Mrs. Juliana paused for a moment, then continued walking, quietly wondering, what's wrong with Mama Rita today? Why is she acting like that? Later, back in her own flat, Mama Rita sat in her chair, lost in thought. "This isn't right," she whispered to herself. "That copper is too close to that baby. Something doesn't feel right. But who will believe me?" She sighed. "I just hope nothing bad comes from this." The next morning, the compound returned to its normal routine. But there was a feeling of tension in the air. Mama Rita kept a close eye on Jerry, her discomfort growing with each moment she saw him with Sophia. Mrs. Juliana, on the other hand, continued to be thankful for Jerry's help, completely unaware of the concerns Mama Rita had. Mama Rita had always been cautious around Jerry. His charm and the way he was always with baby Sophia made her uneasy. Day after day, she watched as Mrs. Juliana handed Sophia to him without a second thought, and her suspicion only deepened. Mama Rita had always felt something about Jerry's behavior wasn't quite right, and her instincts told her that things weren't as they seemed. One sunny afternoon, Mrs. Juliana was getting ready to go to the market. Sophia had been fussy all morning, so, as usual, she took her to Jerry's room. "Please, help me watch her, Copper, Jerry," she said, gently placing Sophia on his bed. "I won't be long." "No problem," Jerry replied, smiling. "You know I'm always here for Sophia." Mrs. Juliana walked away, feeling sure that her baby was safe with Jerry. But Mama Rita, who had been sitting outside her flat, watched the exchange closely. Her suspicions grew, and she decided to act. After Mrs. Juliana was out of sight, Mama Rita quietly moved toward Jerry's room. She stood outside the window and peeked inside. What she saw made her heart stop. Her mouth dropped open, and she quickly covered it with her hands to stop herself from screaming. She stepped back, trembling with fear and anger. "No, no, no," she whispered to herself. "I knew it. I knew something was wrong with that boy." Without a second thought, Mama Rita rushed out of the compound to find Mrs. Juliana. Fortunately, Mrs. Juliana had just finished shopping and was heading back when Mama Rita grabbed her arm. "Come with me," she shouted. Startled, Mrs. Juliana struggled to carry her bags as Mama Rita pulled her toward Jerry's room. "Mama Rita, what's wrong? What's going on?" Mrs. Juliana asked, confused. "You'll see for yourself," Mama Rita snapped, tugging her along. Mrs. Juliana, feeling a sense of urgency, quickly dropped her bags on the ground, not caring if anything inside was fragile. When they reached Jerry's window, Mama Rita motioned for her to look. Mrs. Juliana hesitated for a moment, then cautiously peeked inside. What she saw made her knees go weak. Her heart raced as tears filled her eyes. "No, no, this can't be happening," she whispered in disbelief. Without wasting a second, the two women started banging on Jerry's door, shouting as loudly as they could, "Open this door! Open it now!" When there was no answer, they threw themselves against the door, hitting it with all their strength until it finally burst open. Inside, Jerry was on his knees, his face drained of color. He pleaded, "Please, I'm sorry, forgive me, it's not what it looks like." Tears streamed down his face, but Mama Rita didn't wait to hear any more. In a sudden burst of anger, she charged at him, slapping and punching him with all her strength while calling him names. "You're a devil, a dangerous snake," she shouted. "What did this innocent baby ever do to you?" Meanwhile, Mrs. Juliana stood frozen, unable to understand what she had just seen. Then the soft cries of her baby brought her back to reality. She clutched Sophia's clothes tightly, tears streaming down her face as she whispered, "My baby, my Sophia." Their screams caught the attention of neighbors and passers-by, who rushed into the compound to see what was happening. When the crowd learned what Jerry had done, their anger grew stronger. Someone called the police, and within minutes officers arrived to take Jerry away. That evening the compound was silent, but the tension and sadness hung in the air. Mrs. Juliana sat in her flat, clutching Sophia tightly as she wept uncontrollably. Her heart was broken, and she felt so ashamed. How could she have been so blind? How could she have trusted Jerry with her precious baby? When Mr. Bernard came home from work, Mrs. Juliana couldn't bring herself to tell him what had happened. When he asked why she was crying, she simply shook her head. "It's nothing," she whispered, wiping her tears away. But later that night, the silence was broken by Sophia's cries. Her temperature had shot up and she was crying in pain. Mr. Bernard, now seriously worried, insisted they take her to the hospital. At the hospital, the doctors examined Sophia and asked many questions. Mrs. Juliana, still shaken, struggled to explain what had happened. Eventually, the doctors discovered that Sophia had swallowed something harmful, likely during her time with Jerry. Mr. Bernard was shocked and confused by what the doctors were saying. Mrs. Juliana, with tears in her eyes, explained everything to him. He broke down in tears. "This is serious," the doctor said, his voice heavy. "Whatever she ate is hurting her stomach. We need to keep a close eye on her." Over the next few days, Sophia's condition got worse. Her tiny stomach started to bulge, and she cried non-stop from the pain. Mrs. Juliana and Mr. Bernard stayed by her side day and night, praying for her to get better. Despite the doctor's best efforts, Sophia's condition continued to worsen. Her small body couldn't handle the damage that had been done. One heartbreaking morning, just as the sun was rising, Sophia passed away in her mother's arms. Mrs. Juliana's scream echoed through the hospital halls. "No, no, my baby, my Sophia," she cried, collapsing to the floor. Mr. Bernard tried to comfort her, but his own heart was shattered. Meanwhile, news of Sophia's death spread quickly through the town. At the police station, Copper Jerry was told about the tragedy. He broke down in tears, but his desperate pleas for forgiveness were ignored. The case went to court, and the evidence against Jerry was undeniable. Witness testimonies, medical reports, and Mama Rita's account left no doubt about what had happened. The judge sentenced Jerry to 13 years imprisonment for all the odd things he did to innocent Sophia at the compound, and life was never the same after that. Mrs. Juliana closed down her shop and rarely left her apartment ever again. She blamed herself for trusting Jerry and couldn't bear to face the neighbors after that incident. Mr. Bernard tried to stay strong for his wife, but losing Sophia created a deep emptiness in their hearts. Mama Rita, even though she was proven right, felt no satisfaction in it. She spent many nights praying for the family, wishing they could find peace and healing. In the end, Copper Jerry's story became a warning for everyone in town. It reminded them of the risks of trusting too easily and the need to protect the vulnerable. Though Sophia's life was tragically short, her memory stayed alive, symbolizing innocence and the need for caution. As the compound tried to heal, her loss served as a painful reminder that not all smiles are sincere, and even the kindest strangers can hide dangerous secrets. Always watch over your children and stay alert. The world we live in now is filled with evil and atrocities. Dear viewers, stay vigilant. Did you learn anything from this story? Please kindly share your opinion and tell us which country you are watching from. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you could see more videos from me on this channel. Thank you so much.